Each of the two women now tried to put her son on the Ottoman throne. Mahidevran badly scratched Hurrem's face, ripping some of her hair off, and tore the poor girl's dress.
And Hurrem became the most influential woman, not only in the harem, but also in the entire empire.
The Sultan Suleiman ran out of patience. Hurremsultan would guess who killed her eldest son. However, she would not find any direct evidence.
Hurremsultan, the path from a slave to one of the most powerful women of the Ottoman Empire. The conquest of the Sultan's heart. Once upon a time, there lived a sultan, and his name was Suleiman. Sultansuleiman I ruled the Ottoman since 1520 for a long 42 years. He was an outstanding Turkish ruler, legislator, and reformer, in whose reign the empire reached its greatest heyday. However, this fame doesn't exclusively have to do with his important political deeds, but also with his love for a simple Slavic slave. Nastya Lisovskaya would become not only his beloved legal wife, but also, contrary to all rules, would give birth to 6 sultan's children. Young Anastasia, daughter of a priest from Rogatina, western Ukraine, was taken prisoner and brought to Istanbul. There, the girl was lucky to be bought from the slave traders by the Sultan's best friend and faithful associate, Hargalawi Ibrahim Pasha, who presented her to Suleiman as a gift of honor of the Sultan's ascension to the throne. Ironically, Ibrahim Pasha, who helped Anastasia enter the Sultan's harem, would become her worst enemy. Now part of the harem, the young captive immediately receives a new name, Hurrem, which in Persian means one who brings joy, or the cheerful one, and perfectly highlights the girl's cheerful character. Soon, charming Hurrem manages to become Sultan Suleiman's consort and favorite. This fact doesn't particularly please the Sultan's other favorite, Mahidevran. The beautiful Circassian woman had already given birth to Sultan's son, Mustafa, and didn't intend to lose her sultan to another consort. A terrible argument happened between the two women in love with the sultan, in the course of which Mahidevran badly scratched Hurrem's face, ripping some of her hair off, and tore the poor girl's dress, declaring she was the sultan's only woman, and that the other consorts must obey her. In response to Mahidevran's vicious act, the infuriated sultan made Hurrem his favorite consort. So it was that the era of Hurrem began in the harem. A young yet astute girl, she understands how she needs to act in order to survive in the harem of the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, a most complicated environment. Fortunately, she meets allies who provide her with useful advice. Initially, Hurrem hated the harem and secretly harbored the wish to burn the place to the ground. But upon meeting Suleiman, she falls in love with the Sultan completely and irrevocably, and decides to stay and make the place she'd once hated her true home. To strengthen her sway over the Sultan's heart, and later over the harem too, Hurrem adopts Islam, advised by Sumbul Aga, a eunuch who supported her. It is not an easy decision for the daughter of a Christian priest. But Hurrem was thus able to burn all the bridges with her past and ensure the Sultan's everlasting loyalty. On the occasion, Hurrem said to Suleiman, "I would like to believe in what you believe. It is with your eyes that I wish to look at the sun, and I wish to see what you see. I want to believe in Allah and accept your faith." Suleiman was elated to hear that, and his answer was, "I will be a slave to your heart and your soul, Hurrem." According to Sumbul Aga, an unfaithful woman can never become a mistress, so for Hurrem, adopting Islam was rather a politically motivated step in order to become the mistress of the harem. There was a certain hierarchy within the Sultan's harem which was strictly honored. The mother of the Sultan, Hafsa Sultan, was considered the mistress of the harem. And then it was Mahidevran Sultan, who'd given the Sultan his son Mustafa. Mustafa was considered the main heir to the throne after Suleiman. However, young Hurrem, who, lucky for her, was a very fertile woman, joined the race. Suleiman and Hurrem's first child was their son, Mehmed, and because a Shehzadeh was born, Hurrem became the third most important woman in the harem. At that time, Hurrem Sultan and Mahidevran Sultan were really going head-to-head. While they initially fought for the Padishah's heart, the birth of Mehmed meant the rivalry had reached a completely different level. Each of the two women now tried to put her son on the Ottoman throne. However, this struggle wasn't dictated by a thirst for power. Much more importantly, both of the consorts wanted to save their child from the Fatih law. The Fatih's law read, "And the son who will receive the sultanate is allowed to kill his brothers in the name of the common good." This was also supported by most of the ulema. So let them act accordingly. Thus, according to this cruel law, the Sultan's son who ascended the throne had to murder his own brothers in order to avoid a feud or civil strife. And of course, none of the women wanted that to be her child's future. Hurremsultan was lucky to bear many sons to her sultan. Contrary to the traditions of the Ottoman court, she gave birth to Suleiman's 5 sons and 1 daughter. Immediately after Mehmed, Hurrem and Suleiman had a daughter named Mihrima, then a son named Abdullah, who unfortunately died in infancy. His sons Selim and Bayazid followed, and 6 years later, Cihangir was born. With a bunch of heirs under her belt, Hurrem Sultan achieved what she wanted. She became a mistress whose authority was indisputable in the harem, with even the Sultan's sisters obliged to obey her. Of course, the Sultan's sisters were not happy with the situation because, while directly related to the Ottoman dynasty by their blood, they had to obey the woman who, until not long ago, had been a slave. In addition, they considered Hurrem an upstart and thought she'd bewitched the Sultan, so tried every trick in the book to save him from the clutches of Hurrem.
Heseki Hurrem, favorite wife of the Sultan. Death of the Grand Vizier. Hurrem Sultan managed to get rid of her longtime rival, Mahidevran, at the moment when her son Mustafa was reaching his maturity, was sent to Sanjak, the administrative district of the Ottoman Empire, as governor, to study the art of public administration. His mother accompanied him to Sanjak. Yet Hurrem Sultan did not waste any time. She continued to strengthen her position in the palace, and in spite of well-established, centuries-old Ottoman traditions, she became the official wife of the Sultan. Having become a Muslim and earned her freedom, Hurrem slowly and faithfully began to push Suleiman, who was in love with her, towards marriage. To do so, the cunning Hurrem deprived her Padishah of the night of love, saying that her religion forbade it. By her words, it was a sin, and the laws of God forbid her to engage in fornication. What else could Suleiman, who is burning with love, do? The Sultan decided to enter an official marriage with his beloved concubine, setting a precedent for future generations. Before Suleiman I, no Sultan of the Ottoman Empire married his concubines. But in addition to marriage, he introduced a separate title for Hurrem, Haseki, which meant favorite and only wife of the Sultan. After Suleiman married Hurrem, her status automatically rose, not only over all the other harem women, but also over many state husbands. Haseki Hurrem Sultan was the second most important and influential woman in the harem after Padishah's mother, Hafsa Valide Sultan. However, soon after the marriage of Suleiman and Hurrem, in the same year, Valide Sultan died, and Hurrem became the most influential woman not only in the harem, but also in the entire empire. In another world, the beloved mother-in-law set off, of course, but not without the help of her loathed daughter-in-law. While in bed after a stroke, Valide received news from Hurrem that her beloved son-in-law, Ibrahim Pasha, was cheating on her daughter Hatis, and was soon expecting a baby from the harem Khalifah. The news worsened Valide's condition, leading to her death. However, standing in the path of the determined and forward-thinking Haseki Sultan was still quite a strong rival, Ibrahim Pasha, the Grand Vizier and right hand of Suleiman. Since Ibrahim Pasha openly supported Shahzadeh Mustafa, he automatically became Hurrem Sultan's enemy, and thus eliminating him became her first priority. And at every opportunity, Hurrem pushed Suleiman to see all the mistakes that the Grand Vizier made. Everything was in play: intrigues, fabrication, and vanity traps. To the great luck of Haseki Hurrem Sultan, Ibrahim Pasha made a series of fatal mistakes all on his own, mistakes that Padishah could not forgive. Firstly, Ibrahim Pasha was married to Suleiman's beloved sister Hatis, but had an affair with the harem Khalifah, who then gave birth to his daughter. Secondly, during one of the conquests, Ibrahim Pasha took the nickname Sultan Seraskir, which stood for Sultan Commander-in-Chief. Being an experienced military leader, Ibrahim Pasha dreamed of conquering the lands of the Safavid Persian Empire, and by executing Shah Tahmasp, he took his throne. These circumstances not only undermined Suleiman's trust in the Grand Vizier, but also insulted him to the core. Suleiman considered Ibrahim to be not only a close friend and son-in-law, he trusted him fully, endowing him with great power and even protecting Ibrahim Pasha from himself by an oath that wouldn't allow him to be executed by Suleiman during Suleiman's rule. In addition, rumors began to reach Suleiman Sultan, of course with the help of Hurrem Sultan, about Ibrahim Pasha supporting Suleiman's oldest son, Mustafa, in helping him win the sympathy of both ordinary people and the army of Janissaries. These circumstances forced Suleiman to think about executing his once best friend Ibrahim Pasha. In order not to break the vow he made to the Grand Vizier, Suleiman consulted Ibu Suud Effendi, the highest official in Islamic issues in Istanbul, who gave him the following explanation. Life is activity. When we sleep, we do not live. Let him die while you are asleep. And Ibrahim Pasha was executed while Sultan Suleiman was sleeping. Just like that, the long, exhausting rivalry between Haseki Hurrem Sultan and Ibrahim Pasha came to an end. However, there was still the most important and most significant rival of Hurrem, Mustafa Shahzadeh.
The absolute victory of Hurrem Sultan, the execution of Mustafa. The execution of Ibrahim Pasha of Parga allowed Hurrem Sultan to place her own man, Rustem Pasha, in the position of the Great Vizier. Thanks to the support and lobbying of the influential Hurrem Sultan, Rustem Pasha was able to quickly rise through the ranks and even become a son-in-law of the great Ottoman government. For his loyalty and constant support of Rustem, Hurrem was able to marry him to the only daughter of Mahidevran, and therefore securing the position of most loyal ally. Rustem Pasha was actually a tool in the hands of his powerful mother-in-law, without whose approval he would never have made any progress whatsoever. Hurrem Sultan had influence over Suleiman, and the question of where her sons should have been sent to study politics and governing. So thanks to Hurrem's efforts, Shahzadeh Mustafa was removed as governor of Manisa and transferred to Amasya. Mehmed, Hurrem's eldest son, was named governor of Manisa in his place. Similarly, Suleiman indicated which of his Shahzadeh, Ottoman princes, he saw on the throne. In case of the Sultan's death, one of his sons would quickly get to the capital and take the Ottoman throne. But since Manisa was the closest to Istanbul, the chances were greatest for the Shahzadeh in that province. According to Ottoman tradition, all of the Shahzadehs received education for leading the country by being governors in an imperial province. The Sultan's oldest son was usually the governor of Manisa, or the Padishah close to the worthiest, so each Shahzadeh dreamed of ruling Manisa. Likewise, Ottoman traditions dictated that the mothers of the heirs to the throne, after their positions as governors was issued, would leave to watch over them. However, Hurrem Sultan dared to break tradition here. After her sons were named provincial governors, she stayed in Istanbul and continued influencing on the empire's internal and external politics. However, Mahidevran Sultan was angry at Suleiman and Hurrem. She lost support for Ibrahim Pasha and decided to make a desperate move to save her son and get him on the throne. One of Shahzadeh Mehmed's confidants, Yanakar Ilyas, sent by Mahidevran, injured the heir during sword practice. The wound was sufficiently deep. To heal, the Shahzadeh, crafty Yanakar, suggested a healing salve which would help him quickly heal. However, that salve contained abrasions from people sick with smallpox. The unlucky Shahzadeh became infected and died soon after. Overcome by grief, Hurrem and Suleiman buried their son, erected a mausoleum for him, and renamed a mosque that was built by the famous architect Sinan in his honor. Hurrem Sultan would guess who killed her eldest son,
However, she would not find any direct evidence, but she would still swear to return the favor to Mahidevran Sultan. As a result of the conspiracy between Hurrem Sultan and Rustem Pasha, as well as several careless moves by Shahzadeh Mustafa, the Sultan Suleiman ran out of patience. He ordered the execution of his eldest son. Shahzadeh Mustafa was strangled in his father's tent during another of his campaigns. However, as with the case of Ibrahim Pasha, Hurrem Sultan very subtly pointed the Sultan to a growing conspiracy, both from the side of the vizier and his oldest son. At the moment of his execution, Shahzadeh Mustafa was already 38 years old. When Suleiman took the Ottoman throne, he was 26. Shahzadeh was beloved by the people and the Yanichars, who swore to his loyalty and called him Sultan Mustafa. Suleiman, although already old, was not ready to leave the throne to his arrogant son, since he had 3 more sons with Hurrem Sultan. Therefore, Sultan Suleiman executed his son, attempted to halt the Yanichar rebellion, and maintain peace. After the execution of Shahzadeh Mustafa, there were 2 remaining heirs to the throne, Shahzadeh Salim and Shahzadeh Bayezid. Shahzadeh Jihangir was not an heir because of a birth defect which caused him physical pain. Unfortunately, as a result of the prolonged illness, Hurrem Sultan died without seeing her son on the throne. However, the red-haired sultana entered into history as the matriarch of the female sultanate in the Ottoman Empire, where women had enormous power and influence on internal and external affairs. Hazaki Hurrem Sultan's sons, Salim and Bayezid, competed with each other from a young age. Now that they were competing for the throne, they began fighting to the death. Bayezid, upset by the execution of his favorite brother, Mustafa, understood that the throne might be left to his older brother Salim, so both Shahzadeh started gathering allies. By order of the Sultan Suleiman, Salim and Bayezid, to avoid internal conflict, were sent to far-off provinces. However, Bayezid refused to follow the order. Sultan Suleiman understood this action as a rebellion and announced his support for Salim. The armies of the 2 brothers fought near Konya. With his father's army support, Salim defeated Bayezid. Shahzadeh Bayezid, along with his 4 sons, needed to flee to the Safavid dynasty, where he asked Shah Tahmasp for refuge. However, after long negotiations, he was handed over to his father, Sultan Suleiman, and executed with his young sons. So the Ottoman throne, after the death of Sultan Suleiman, was taken by Shahzadeh Salim, the red-haired son of Hurrem Sultan.